Hey everyone, it's a sunny Thursday where I am, and I'm excited to be talking chocolate with you. Today we're going to talk about a American craft chocolate maker who makes unroasted cacao, and that is Raaka Chocolate. So I've got a few of their bars, Bananas Foster, Waffle Cone, Snickerdoodle. So the thing that is different and unique about Raaka Chocolate is that they make unroasted cacao. So they process their beans a little bit different than everybody else. But we'll talk about that more. First, let's talk about how they were founded and who the founders are. So Raaka Chocolate was founded in 2010 by Ryan Chaney, who is the founder, and now his title is executive chair, I believe. It used to be CEO. And Nate Hodge, who is the head chocolate maker. Just like, I think it's February of this year, they hired a new CEO. So Ryan gave up the title of CEO and they hired, it's a woman whose name escapes me right now, but she is the new CEO as of early February. I think it was February 2021, but I could be wrong on that. So Ryan and Nate were the founders. Ryan has a background in digital media design. He got his bachelor's from the University of Pennsylvania. He was an animator, a computer programmer, and he speaks English and German. Nate, on the other hand, got his bachelor's from Ithaca College in speech and communication rhetoric. He worked at radio stations as a program director and a music director. And Nate's just kind of fascinated by how food traditions develop over time. So, how did these two become chocolate makers? You don't have to have a background in food, anything, to become a chocolate maker. Let's see. So, let's talk about Ryan. So, Ryan, in 2008, quit his job to go travel around the world with his then girlfriend. And they ended up at a place in Thailand called Agama Yoga, which is a tantric yoga school. And this school believed that enlightenment came through sensory experiences. So while he was there, he took a class on raw chocolate and aphrodisiacs. I think he was making aphrodisiac truffles, and he was hooked. So he comes home to the United States, and he, after about a year of experimenting with the flavors of raw chocolate, he teams up with Nate. Now Nate, and I'm going to show you this. So Nate has actually written a book about chocolate and making chocolate, but Nate tells a little origin story in here about him, where he, in the fall of 2009, he was at a farmer's market and came across Taza chocolate, and they were selling some cocoa beans, and he had recently experimented with roasting coffee beans at home and had what he considered success at that. So he's like, oh, well, I can roast cocoa beans then. How hard could it be? And so he buys these beans, and he didn't think he was didn't needed any instruction because he knew how to roast coffee beans. So roasting cocoa should be the same. He brought them home. He fired up his oven to 450, and that was the temperature that he roasted his coffee beans at. And here it says, very quickly the kitchen began to smell like brownies, and I was pleased. After 6 or 7 minutes, though, the smell began to change to a distinct burnt smell, and smoke began to seep out my oven door. I turned off the oven and opened it. I immediately heard a series of small pops, and then my cocoa beans burst into flames. After this incident, and I did some research and found out that I had roasted my beans at least 125 degrees too hot, and probably for too long too. And so when he met Ryan, and Ryan was like, hey, I want to make raw chocolate, no roasting involved. Well, hallelujah, no roasting involved. You didn't have to burn any more beans. So these guys team up, and they start in Brunswick, Brooklyn, New York, near New York City apartment in 2010. That's how they started. They now have a factory in Red Hook, Brooklyn, which was built in the 1930s, I believe. Still in the Brooklyn area. So that is how those two started, and that's how they got together, and that's where the concept of raw chocolate came from. All right, let's talk about raw. Okay, can chocolate be raw? Is it chocolate if it's raw? So raw has kind of a loose definition. There's nothing legal about it. There's no certifications that I know of that you can get. But in general, the raw people it can't be a food that goes over a temperature of 104 to 118 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 40 to 48 degrees Celsius. It shouldn't be refined. It shouldn't be pasteurized. It shouldn't be treated with chemicals or processed. So, if you know anything about how chocolate is made, chocolate doesn't fit into that at all. Even if you're not roasting, there are several steps where your cocoa beans are going to hit over 118 degrees Fahrenheit. First, they'll hit over 118 when you're fermenting them. Inside that fermentation box, when the anaerobic fermentation is going on with the yeast and it's converting sugars into acetic acid, and it's exothermic reaction. It releases heat, and so fermentation, before you even get the cocoa beans up to New York, they're getting over 118 degrees. Grinding will get you over 118 degrees. Running it through a mill will get you over 118 degrees. So it's really, really tricky to get something that is technically raw chocolate. So even though their name, Raaka, means raw in Finnish, it can also mean unfettered or a strong personality, which could also fit based on their bars. It's not really raw chocolate. So when they found that out, they kind of pivoted away from saying it's raw chocolate into using terms like virgin chocolate or unroasted chocolate. It is unroasted chocolate. They do not roast their chocolate. But their philosophy is kind of that they think there is no one right way to make chocolate, and they really wanted to keep the bright, bold flavors of an unroasted cacao bean. So that's what they're doing. I will talk. So I have some personal hang-ups about raw chocolate because I've seen some stuff on farms that gives you the shivers. And so I'll talk a little bit about how they address those concerns when they're making their chocolate when we flip the camera around. So let's flip the camera around and take a look at some Raaka chocolate. Okay, so one of the things that Ryan has said is that he wasn't in business for the sake of being in business. He wanted to have a social impact. So these guys, they do something called transparent trade, which I will talk a little bit more about at the end of the video. But they also they do have some certifications, but many certifications fail to meet their needs. And so that's why they developed their transparent trade model. But here's a whole list. They're vegan, they're gluten-free, they're kosher, they're dairy-free, they're soy-free, they're unroasted, they're organic, there's one more that I'm missing, non-GMO. So they are lots of those things that people seek out nowadays. So I have a few of their bars. I have the Snickerdoodle bar, I have the waffle cone, I have Blue Magic. This one is super fun. If you haven't seen this one on Instagram, you'll see it on my Instagram soon. So make sure to watch for that one. It's a fun one. The one I'm going to open today, I think, is this Bananas Foster. This Raaka chocolate is not your 2-3 ingredient chocolate. They have lots of other ingredients in their chocolate. So this one, I'm gonna do this one because it's the one that has the least amount of ingredients. Not that I super care about the number of ingredients that you have in your bar, but just cause. So let's take a look at it. So in 2018, let's look at these two. They rebranded their packaging so that it reflects more of the flavors that are in the cacao and in the bar. So you can see this is Bananas Foster. So these flavors kind of make you think about the flavors that are in Bananas Foster. Banana, caramel, and fruitiness, and that sort of thing. And then you have the waffle cone here. So the flavors kind of reflect what's in the bar itself. And that's also when they developed their transparent trade model. So let's take a look at this. So brulee in a bar. So we're using Peruvian cacao, which they say down here, Oro Verde, Peruvian cacao. They talk a little bit about why unroasted. So there's a unique flavor that they want to capture. They want to keep that flavor that can change when you roast. There's this bright, fruity, acidic flavor that you find in raw cacao that is not in other roasted cacao beans. Let's see. So vegan, gluten-free, soy-free, nut-free. Oh, that's the one I missed. We have organic cacao beans, organic cane sugar, organic cocoa butter, organic banana, and organic vanilla bean. Let's see, certified organic and kosher, Brooklyn, New York, some nutrition facts, and then you have your expiration date. All right, so let's open this one up. Let's see what's inside. Okay, let's separate this from the wrapper. Okay, so lots of information on the inside too. So they talk about, so specifically this is the origin that they're buying their beans from, and they actually show the fair trade price, what the price is per pound, what they paid. And this is something interesting that you don't see when farmers talk about price. Usually it's free on board or FOB price, which means it's on the ship, on its way out. Farm gate price is what's paid to the farmer. So this is the price that they pay to the farmers. And sometimes that can be hard to find from other makers. So they've got all the information in here, where it's coming from, Peru, the type of co-op that it's coming from, flavor profile. So lots and lots of information. They're trying to be transparent with their information here, to let you know that they're more than just a chocolate company. They're a social enterprise. So let's take a look at the bar. All right, it's a nice looking bar. It's got a nice shine to it, if you can see that. It doesn't when I open it. Sometimes when I open bars, I get this big woof of smell. I'm not getting that right now. It is allergy season for me, so maybe that's the reason, or maybe it's just not there. It looks nice. So let's see if we can listen to a snap here. Pretty good snap. So this one was a 66% cacao. So not a super high percentage, but still a good snap. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to use my thumb to warm up the cocoa butter a little bit and release some of the volatile compounds and get those aromas, and then I'll taste it and we'll come back and talk about it. Okay, so when I taste this, when I warm it up, I get earthy, fudge, dried fruit. I find that most raw chocolate has this earthy undertone all the way through it. When I eat it, when I taste it, I get the earthiness. I get really strong raisins, really strong green banana, a little bit of black tea in there, pineapple. It's got a little bit of a gritty mouth feel to it, more so than roasted chocolate. I get in the back of my throat, at the back of my palate, a bitter, slightly bitter astringency and a strong, lasting finish of acidity and a tiny bit of bitterness in my mouth that lingers for a long time. So that's what I'm getting in this. I definitely get the bananas. I'm not sure I so much get the Foster part, just because the unroasted cacao is just so bright and bold and there, and you get these strong flavors. I think they're overpowering the sugar and the vanilla that's in there. So I definitely get the bananas. I don't so much get the Foster's part, but that doesn't mean that it's not a good bar. So one of my things I said at the beginning, I have a hang up a little bit about raw cacao because I have been to farms and I have seen the way they process cacao, and you can't get around it. After you've dried cacao, there are microbes on cacao beans that could be dangerous to ingest. So I've always been a little bit wary of raw cacao. So the way these guys deal with it is, first they have an optical sorter. So when they grind up the beans to remove the shell, they also remove anything else that might be in there. And there's often other things in there, rocks, twigs, who knows, bobby pins, whatever else is in there. Then they put it in a melanger for 2 days, and that gets hot enough to be a kill step. So that generally kills all the microbes that will be on the beans. But after that, they then put it in a 3-roll mill. And this 3-roll mill, the process, they put it through all these processes, and it's kind of mimicking what happens when you roast it. When you roast it, you release all these compounds that you don't want in there to develop a flavor. When they're doing this repeated milling of it and mixing and conching, the same thing is happening. So when they put it through this 3-roll mill, it removes some of that raw feel and taste. So you're getting a little bit smoother mouthfeel from this. You're reducing the acidity. And then after the roll mill, so melanger, roll mill, then they put it in a conch for up to 18 hours. And that also gets rid of some of the excess acetic acid in the cacao. So, and then on top of that, they also have a person who's dedicated to testing. So they have someone who tests for pathogens and allergens at the end of the process. So that is how they make it safe to eat raw cacao, which in general, if you find yourself with a raw cacao bean, be a little bit careful about just eating it in the raw state. So let's see, what else do I want to tell you about them? I think I will tell you a little bit more about their transparent trade when we flip the camera around. So that is the Raaka Chocolate we're trying for today. Let's flip and talk. Okay, so Raaka Chocolate. Fun flavors to experiment with in your chocolate tasting. These guys try to avoid ethically ambiguous terms. That's one of the reasons why they developed their own term, transparent trade. Now there's some, right now in the news, there's some issues. There's a court case in the Supreme Court about how the big 5 chocolate companies trade. These guys try to do it ethically and responsibly, and they found that certifications didn't exactly fit their mold when it came, specifically fair trade they're talking about. So they developed their own. So this came with my thing when I ordered. So you can see here's the conventional model for how cacao gets to the chocolate maker. Here's theirs. So it's grown by the farmer, it goes to an exporter, and then it goes to Raka. So they also use the term grower-centric organizations. So that's what this step would be. So organizations like Cocoa Camili, ones that support the cacao farmers and the cacao growers. So they have direct purchasing from co-ops or growers organizations. They provide price stability. So like we looked at in their wrapper with the graph where they pay above fair trade, they publish their farm gate price. So they're being very transparent. They pay a protected premium. And their pricing is transparent. Like I said, it's on there. Everyone can see how much they're paying. You can compare it to other people. It's high compared to, say, Cargill or Mondelez or those other ones, the big guys that are buying chocolate. It's much higher than what they would pay their farmers. So that is the model that they fit to work with their company as a social enterprise. Some of their nutritional claims, they've backed off a little bit on their nutritional claims. They were kind of inspired by Michael Pollan, but there's not a huge amount of science backing that all up. Definitively backing it all that up, let's say it that way. So they kind of backed off on their health claims. But if you care about things like gluten-free, vegan, dairy-free, soy-free, all of that, they are trying to do those things as well. So that's Raaka Chocolate out of Brooklyn in the United States. Hey, if you want to talk story with me every week, make sure you hit subscribe and like and leave me a comment. Have you tried raw chocolate? Do you think this is controversial? What do you think of raw chocolate? Yay or nay? Let me know in the comments section. And I love to hear from you guys. And I hope to see you next week.